So I spent a copious amount of time scouring through several financial websites looking at financial statements, updates about companies, as well as articles, but I also spent a lot of time floating around on X.com looking for interesting posts, and I recently stumbled across this post from Gary Black, who's a fund manager and also long-term bullish on Tesla, and he recently said this: with Tesla again building up cash at a stupid rate, $29 billion at 2023 year end, with predictions cash could hit $150 billion by 2030, and Tesla in between two major growth weights, I'll ask again, why doesn't Tesla distribute some of its unneeded cash, $10 billion over 3 years, back to shareholders? All of Tesla's tech competitors are returning cash to shareholders. It's the sensible thing to do rather than let cash build unchecked at a 4 to 5% return on investment. However, I actually disagree with Gary Black on this, both on the idea that Tesla is going to even do a $10 billion buyback and also on the idea that it's actually needed. Now, the reason why I pretty much disagree with his thoughts on this is because, one, we heard Elon Musk first kind of bring up the idea of Tesla doing a buyback back in the meeting in October of 2022, and we still haven't seen or got any updates on that happening. And so I still think that it's honestly kind of out of the window. It's not likely to happen, and I know a lot of shareholders would want that, but I also think that that would not be the greatest thing for Tesla, and I actually think there's a better alternative. For example, Tesla does indeed have a ton of cash that is sitting on when you look at cash and cash equivalents, but when you look at the statement of operations for Tesla and you look at research and development, while it has been increasing pretty much every single quarter, I honestly think there's room for a lot more to go ahead and invest in research and development, especially if Tesla's trying to kind of get out of the narrative of just being a car company and really be a tech company like it's trying to do. In fact, if you take a look at Nvidia, they spend a significantly larger amount towards research and development. And this is with them having pretty similar cash and cash equivalents. In fact, it's actually slightly lower than Tesla. So I honestly think the best idea would be for Tesla to kind of focus more and invest more to go ahead and reach its goals for, having, unsupervised fully self-driving, and also having, the Optimus robots have much more advancements or just more updates, because quite honestly, it's been very disappointing hearing the updates or the lack of when it comes into their AI developments. And of course, I understand that everyone wants a buyback because of course that would be very bullish. We'd see Tesla stock move upwards, but I honestly see buybacks oftentimes as kind of like a cheap way to make a stock go up rather than just kind of actually investing for the company to bring in just more revenues from other areas that would also bring up the stock price as well. And so that's just my view on it. I honestly don't think Tesla is going to do this buyback that it talked about back in 2022, and I honestly think that they shouldn't do it. But again, everyone has their own opinions that they're entitled to, but again, I don't think it's likely to happen. But something else that's pretty notable, we recently had a politician disclose a trade on how they're actually selling shares of Tesla. And if you guys remember, I shared this chart on how back in 2023, pretty much all the members in Congress who traded pretty much outperformed the market. And this was at the year when the S&P 500 did pretty well. It did 24%, yet a majority of individuals in Congress outperformed the market. And so I always say that you want to pay attention to what these politicians are doing. Cough, cough, Nancy Pelosi. But, one of the things I do want to bring up is that this politician in particular, he's not one of the, highest ranking traders in terms of politicians, especially if we look at last year's return. Although he did beat the S&P 500, he isn't one of the best traders out there in terms of politicians trading. And also, it was a smaller trade. It's not like back in December when Nancy Pelosi put millions of dollars up for Nvidia, and I warned those within the Push and Profit private group that, hey, look, you want to pay attention to the Nvidia because one, fundamentally it's looking good, and from a technical perspective, it's looking for a breakout. And then on top of that, you had Nancy Pelosi putting millions of dollars, and then for those within the Push and Profit private group, we caught that amazing trade to the upside. Now, Also, another note, just off topic, we do have Nvidia announcing its earnings on Tuesday, or is it Wednesday? I'll go ahead and confirm that later on in this video, but because we're gonna go ahead and take a look at that. But that's also something that's going to shape the overall direction of the market, as we know that AI has pretty much been a big driver in 2024. But with that said, I want us to go ahead and hop into my laptop. This way we can take a look at Tesla stock from a technical perspective as well, and also highlight a couple of things that we want to be mindful of moving forward. However, before we go ahead and move into my laptop, just a friendly reminder that if you have not done so already, consider tapping that subscribe button so that you don't miss out on any future upload. And also, I'm doing something very special where every single person that subscribes to this video equals one more treat for my cat Mochi, and she is a hungry cat and she loves her tweets. So I said that completely wrong, but if you guys want to go ahead and support the channel and also want to see a cat enjoying some treats, make sure to tap that subscribe button. But with that said, let's go ahead and hop into my laptop. Alrighty, so we are officially in my laptop taking a look at Tesla stock, and we are at a very interesting area, especially for myself, who is someone who is long-term bullish on Tesla. I know oftentimes a lot of people don't see that, especially because I've been very bearish on Tesla within the last couple of months. In fact, back in December 28th, I actually called this as being the top for Tesla. You could go ahead and watch the previous videos. I said, look, we have earnings coming out. From a fundamental standpoint, it's not looking good for Tesla, and from a technical standpoint, it wasn't looking good for Tesla, and we ended up seeing Tesla stock falling down rapidly. A lot of people were in denial. People were commenting on my video saying, no, you're wrong, Tesla's going to go to 300 next week. Nope, that didn't happen. We saw Tesla fall down, and I said, look, there's two areas in which I would like to buy Tesla, and I said this back when Tesla hit about $180. I said, look, I don't think this is the absolute bottom just yet. I want to go ahead and wait out. And there were two areas I said. I said, look, from a bearish standpoint, right? If we fall down below this volume shelf over here where there's a lot of volume relative to price, we could possibly fill this gap at around 145, and around that area I'll be more comfortable to go ahead and buy more shares of Tesla for my long-term portfolio, as around that area it fits well within my DCF models. For example, if you guys don't know what that is, as discounted cash flows, and I have my fundamental models in which I see like the intrinsic value for Tesla, and it's definitely overvalued right now. And so I said, we get closer to that 145 area, I'll go ahead and I'll add more shares. And that was the bear case, right? But the bull case, I said, okay, well, I don't want to just buy just yet because we hit 180. It's possible that we could fall down further, but if we do start bouncing up, I want to buy at that 204 level. Now, we ended up kind of going up close to it, fell down even lower to 175, and then recently we had Tesla get close to that 204 area. Now, this was pretty much the idea that a lot of people thought that Elon actually acquired more shares of Tesla, or he got a larger stake, and I debunked that in the previous video. I actually debunked that the day of, for those within the Push and Profit private group, that was actually incorrect, but nonetheless, we saw Tesla go up, and we're close to that $204 area. So we're very close to one of the points where I said I wanted to add more to my long-term portfolio. But again, just because I am perhaps adding to my long-term portfolio, if we get to that 204 area that I was looking for, does not necessarily mean that you should do that. You should always trade and invest in whatever you see value in, but we're at that area, very close. But there's a couple of things on the horizon that kind of show, they kind of may trigger some scary sell-offs, and so I want to go ahead and touch on that, right? So first of all, let's talk about what we have coming this week. So we have the U.S. leading economic indicator. This is kind of just like a leading indicator of how the economy is doing, and that's coming out on Tuesday. Of course, this Monday, markets are closed, so definitely enjoy your day off with the markets closed. So definitely a shorter week, but we also have the Fed minutes meeting coming out, and we want to see, is the rhetoric from the Federal Reserve, still going to be very hawkish, or what the idea is from the meeting minutes. So that's coming out. Again, you're going to want to check on fed.gov to get access to those FOMC meeting minutes when they come out. And then, of course, we have a plethora of members from the Federal Reserve speaking. And, of course, every time they speak, they have some influence for the markets, right? Because, of course, when you hear someone being more hawkish and they sit on the seat to go ahead and make the decisions for monetary policy, well, that's not good, right? So a lot of things coming up, but of course, one of the things I'm going to be watching for is that leading economic index. Now, interestingly enough, last month, Wells Fargo, they said that, hey, it fell down only 0.1%, which was much lower than in the past. However, the leading economic index has been falling down for 22 months consecutively. That's not good. Historically, this kind of predicts recessions. Of course, not everything's going to be 100%, an indication of something, right? You can't just look at past performance and make that indicative of future performance, right? But interesting enough, it's been collapsing, and Wells Fargo, one of the things I want to highlight is last month they said that, hey, the milder pace of contractions suggests that activity, especially in interest rate sensitive sectors, have found a floor. So they were saying, hey, look, things may be bottoming out and that this is good for the markets, but now their expectations are along with the markets that the leading economic index is going to fall down even further than what it did prior. So this whole idea of it kind of finding this bottom is kind of out the window. Now the idea is things are going to contract even more, and that's not a good sign. Especially when you look at what contributes to the leading economic indicators or index. One of the things that has been holding us up is stock prices, as well as pretty much leading credit, right? Pretty much we've seen credit soften a bit, but we may see that those credit or lending conditions tighten again as we hear more hawkish rhetoric. And so that's why I'm going to be paying attention to that taking place at 10 a.m. on Tuesday. That's going to have a huge shift or it's going to continue with shaping the direction of the markets that I want us to be aware of. But of course, ultimately, we also have a whole bunch of earnings coming out, with one of the major ones being NVIDIA, right? This is actually happening on Wednesday. I think earlier I said Tuesday, but to correct myself, that's going to be Wednesday after the close of the markets. And again, we want to pay attention to that because AI has been pretty much contributing to a lot of the strength in the markets, but we're recently seeing a little bit of a pullback with AI now, especially with just tech in general. And one of the things I often highlight for those within the Push and Profit private group is that you want to look at the overall breadth of the markets, right? And so when you look at the S&P 500 equally weighted, right, it is kind of moving sideways. It's not bad, it's not horrible, but it is kind of slowing down the momentum. And one of the things I say is that, hey, if you're looking at the S&P 500 and you want to know if it's going up and the momentum is there, look at it equally weighted. And equally weighted, it's kind of slowing down. Now, when you look at pretty much the tech sector, which is XLK, we see that it's falling down, so we're seeing some selling pressure take place with tech, and I believe that's just natural. There's like this sector rotation going on, where pretty much the profits that were made in a lot of these AI plays or in chips, chip makers, they're kind of selling and rotating it, and so that's something that could be pretty interesting, right? We're getting away from tech and going into other sectors. For example, if we take a look at XLV. Healthcare is actually doing pretty well. It did kind of fall down a little bit after recently making new highs, but we're seeing kind of money flow out of tech and flowing more into healthcare, and so that's something that we want to be mindful of. But let's take a look at NVIDIA, right? Again, this was something I called out before it broke out. It was back in December 22nd. I even showed screenshots in previous videos how I mentioned it for those within the Push and Profit private group that this was primed to break out, and it absolutely did. It was a killer trade idea, but and look at that. It did almost 47% from when I called it out. Just 2 months. And I do have NVIDIA also in my long-term portfolio, so I am long-term bullish on it. But I did take some short-term trades in my trading account. But we're starting to see selling pressure with NVIDIA, and that makes sense, especially because we have the earnings coming out, and maybe people are just trimming off before we perhaps had the disappointing earnings. And so that's also going to have a directional impact on the markets. Now, we also have some other EV companies, Rivian,
Lucid, and Nikola. I really don't pay too much attention to these companies. I'm going to be 100% honest. I do glance over to see how they're doing. Oftentimes just relative to Tesla, and also just to kind of see a little bit of the idea for EVs and the demand, but not something that's of any significance, but definitely something to pay attention to. But again, we have a lot of companies reporting earnings. One of the other ones is Walmart. I often say Walmart is a good barometer to see how the labor market's doing because they are the largest employer in the nation. And so we've seen this trend of a lot of companies start saying that they're cutting jobs, and they're trimming fat to make themselves look more attractive. And of course, if we hear something from Walmart saying, "Hey, we're trying to trim," well, they're not going to blatantly say that, but they're going to, if they say anything along the lines that they're cutting down on the workforce, well, that could be bad, right? Because one of the things that's holding up the economy is pretty much the labor markets. And if we see the labor markets spike up with unemployment, well, that's not going to be a good thing. So we have a lot of interesting stuff happening this week. Don't think that just because it's a short week, President's Day, no, we have a lot of things happening. So definitely a lot to pay attention to. But with that said, you guys let me know in the comment section below, what are your thoughts on Tesla stock moving forward? Are you guys trading Tesla? Are you guys investing in Tesla? Again, I do both. I am a long-term investor, and I do have a short-term trading account. And I'm kind of staying away from Tesla and the trading account right now, honestly. And right now I'm kind of sitting off on NVIDIA as well. There's going to be some other names that I'm going to go ahead and highlight for those within the Push and Profit private group. But with that said, you guys just let me know in the comment section below. And before you guys go, make sure to check out this next video right over here. I'll see you guys on that next video. Take care, guys.